Hi, everybody. This is Blaine DeSantis, and I welcome you to another edition of Books and Looks. Yes, it's our weekly voyage of discovery in the wonderful world of books, books that I've been reading and authors that I've been interviewing. And today we are going to be chatting with an author, Jaclyn Goldis. Jaclyn has written a wonderful mystery thriller called The Main Character. I'm holding it up here for you to see. The Main Character. This is a very interesting young author. She's going to talk to us about how she changed professions from being a lawyer to becoming a full-time author. She's already had 2 books published, has 2 more ready to go, and another 2 she's working on. Boy, she's prolific. I'm going to tell you that at a very young age. She's very good. She's very talented. This is about murder on a train, sort of like, murder on the Orient Express, because this murder that's going to take place, there's a death, takes place on the Orient Express. That's right. We're going from up about Cinque Terre in Italy down to Positano in Italy. Lots going on the train, off the train. The characters are always evolving, always shifting. We have a main character who's an author who interviews a person by the name of Rory, who is her main character for her newest novel. I mean, then we get into her friends, her relatives. I tell you what, it is a wonderfully designed book. We're going to learn a lot about the perception, because what Rory sees as why things happen a certain way, other people don't see it the same way because everybody looks at something through a different perspective. We're also going to have a little bit of fun and do a casting call to see who would Jaclyn have to be playing the parts if this turned into a movie. And it might turn into something yet. My understanding is very possible. She's a very good writer, so I tell you, great stuff. Anyway, hey, let's go right into our interview with Jaclyn Goldis. Jaclyn, welcome to Books and Looks.
Thank you so much, Blaine. Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
We are happy to have you. Jaclyn is coming to us today from Tel Aviv, Israel. Wow, amazing. How are things over in Israel?
It's quite the time here. It's been a hard time. It's been a really sad time. There's a lot of suffering in Israel and in the region, and I hope it ends soon.
My understanding is now you've been living in Israel for quite a few years.
Yes, I've been here for 8 years.
Wow,
Yes.
very good. Very good. All right, well, why don't we start a little bit about you? Where are you from? You weren't from Tel Aviv, obviously. Where were you from? Where did you go to college? And I think there's a law school involved there. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Michigan, the suburbs of Detroit, and I went to college in Michigan as well to U of M in Ann Arbor, and law school at NYU in New York.
Oh, okay. Good. And so you decided to become an attorney. Well, now, what type of law did you practice?
So I was a trust and estates lawyer. I practiced in Chicago for I guess like 7.5 years. Um, and it was, you know what? I loved it. I mean, I knew the whole time that my path was hopefully going to change and become this writing path. It's like this has been my biggest dream since I was a kid to be a full time writer. But I actually really enjoyed my legal practice. I worked with amazing people. Um, I like to say I had the best job in big law. I worked pretty reasonable hours and I was interested in what I did. And yeah, it was a nice time.
Well, then why did you decide to retire? Other than you had always wanted to be a writer, what was there any one thing that said now's the time?
I had thought when I was going to practice law that law was kind of going to be, I heard a lot growing up. You can't be a full time writer. You need an actual career. No one makes money from this. That's not, that's like a hobby. It's not a career. And, I felt that I don't think at 22 I was ready monetarily or life experience wise to just start writing full time. Even though I did write novels, like I wrote my first novel when I was 17. I wrote 2 books in my 20s when I was working as a lawyer. And yeah, so I kind of like law school. It just I did well in the LSATs. I got into a good law school. It sort of just all happened, and I had always intended to leave after a few years, but the money was amazing, and my job, as I said, I worked pretty nice hours and with nice people, so I just ended up staying longer than I expected. And at a certain point, it felt right in my personal life. I think I was in a way lucky because I'm very much a beach, warm weather person, and I was living in Chicago. And so it felt like the wrong place for me. I couldn't live it. I couldn't do those winters anymore. And so I think if I had been working at a law firm in like Miami, or like LA, it might have been harder for me to leave. But I knew that I needed to switch cities. And so felt right to make a move.
I left 25 years and after being an attorney, and you'd be amazed at the number of lawyers that we have on who've written books. Just it's amazing. I'm saying every third
Yeah.
one. Yeah, yeah.
I was surprised. I remember when I left my job and I worked with a lot of, I was the youngest in our group and I worked with like a lot of older men and women. And I kind of thought they were going to think I was crazy. Like, who gives up a job like this? I would have gone up for partnership that year. And I remember being surprised. I think some did maybe think I was a little bit crazy, but I remember seeing the look on some of people's faces of like, wow, I wish I could go back and make a change like this too. And that kind of surprised me. And yeah, it was interesting.
That's good for you. Good for you. Now, this book, it's we have a murder in this book. Obviously, it's a mystery, but this is also the story of an effect of an author and her process. And this is amazing because the title comes from the process of the main character. Tell us the name of the author who's going to be writing this book that she's working on, and what is this main character research? What is that all about?
So, yes, the main character, well, one of the main characters of the book is my author, Ginevra X. And as you said, she has this very unique process of how she writes her big best-selling novels, which is that she hires a real-life person to be the main character of her book, and she pays them a lot of money, and she interviews them extensively and researches them extensively, and then she sort of fictionalizes their story.
Have you heard any other author who does something like that, or is this completely your creativity?
No, I've never heard of anyone who does it this way. It completely is my own imagination. And it wasn't the first kernel of the book. Like I had a first, books always come to me in different ways. This one came to me, I like saw the first, actually what you see is the second scene I saw in my head. And I saw the final scene in my head. And then I was like, huh, how do they get there? And as I was entertaining ideas, I sort of had thought about writing about an author, and I got this idea of like, what if she had so much trauma in her past that because as authors, we kind of mine our own past, even though our characters aren't us, they have little sprinklings of us. And I thought about like, what if there was a character who so didn't want to go there with her own life. And so she kind of hired these people to take their traumas and their quirks and so it kind of spun out from there.
That was wonderful. One of the things that I like about this book is I call it like a double beginning almost, because you start with the author actually just walking in and finding the dead body, which in most things doesn't happen right away. But here, that first thing, she finds a dead body and says something like, I wasn't expecting this. That was very, very unique. I like that. Again, did that come to you in the middle of the night, or how did you decide to start with that?
It came to me pretty early in the process. Like I think when I realized what the book was going to be, because I'm a planner, like I'm a plotter, I don't just pants my way through books like some authors say. And so I think pretty early when I was planning, I thought, oh, I think that will be good because I knew also typically in my books, I think some thrillers, murders start happening in the first quarter of the book. And in mine, typically they're a little bit later in the book. And so I think to tease, like, so a thriller reader knows that the murder is coming, even if it's not like dropped in right away. I like that. Um, it keeps like the suspense up. So
Kept me guessing. As I wrote you earlier, around a month ago, I had it figured out already 5 different times. I was wrong all the time. It's amazing. Oh my, oh my. Well, after we find that, then you take us back in time to like 3 months prior to this, and we find out a little bit about Rory and that she was the main character of this author's interviews and going to be the book. And then next thing you know, she's put on this train. How did she get put on the train? And what's the name of the train? And how did she come? Why was she on it?
So she's on the Orient Express. That was actually one of the first kernels for this book, is that I read this article in one of the travel publications about how the Orient Express trains were actually being refurbished and were starting to crisscross Europe again, and that they were replicas of the Orient Express trains that um, we all know from the movies and had their heyday in, the 20s and the 1920s. And so I was like, wow, that's so cool. And of course, as like a thriller writer, Agatha Christie is the queen and the gold standard. So, everyone knows Murder on the Orient Express. So I kind of had thought, wouldn't that be fun to kind of spin out into something else? Um, and yeah, so I have Rory on this train. Rory is the main character actually, and she's was the main character for Ginevra, and Ginevra gifts her this um bonus kind of this luxurious trip on the Orient Express for 3 days. And so Rory's very excited for this free trip.
Yes, she was very excited. Absolutely. Now, but Agatha Christie, Murder on the Orient Express. Did you read that book?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. Several times, but actually not before I wrote this book. Like probably the last time I read it was 5 years ago or something. So yes, I've read it, but I didn't read it in preparation or anything.
Okay, good. Now, the itinerary, they got in somewhere in northern, I don't know where they got on, but they had to go to Cinque Terre, then Rome, then Positano. Is this an actual itinerary that the Orient Express does right now?
No. So actually, it's very funny because as I was planning the trip, I wanted them to go to multiple stops. And I kind of thought, well, why isn't train travel kind of like a cruise ship? Usually train travel takes you from one destination to another. And I was more envisioning, well, if you're already paying exorbitant fees for this like luxurious trip, why don't they get off in a couple stops? Why doesn't it take a few days? So I kind of made up my own itinerary and my own stops where I wanted it to stop. And then it was very funny because maybe like 6 months ago, the Orient Express announced that they're having this new line that's going to run to Liguria, which is where my book is set. So, that's where Cinque Terre is. So, their line isn't exactly, it's like Paris to Positano, or no, to Paris to Portofino. But I thought it was so funny that I kind of divined something in advance, because the Orient Express before that had never had a line like in the Mediterranean.
My uncle Fernando took the Orient Express. I think he told me he took it from Venice to Paris. I'm not sure, but that it was more of an east-west than it was north-south. So, okay. Well, that's really interesting. Huh. So they're going to do that now. She finds out Rory, who is a disgraced, we'll find this disgraced newscaster, finds out. He gets chosen to be the main character. And what she finds out early on, she's got to go to Positano. What's at the hotel? What's the restaurant? What's the whole deal with Positano? Do you know?
Well, do you want me to give spoilers?
No, I don't want to give spoilers, but I mean, what's the hotel? Why they're going there? Is that the end of the line? I mean, is that the end of the line? Does it go any further than Positano? Does it go down to God
No,
knows where?
in my imagination, this train line ended in Positano. It's like a 3-day trip with these three stops: Cinque Terre, Rome, and Positano. And so I knew the train trip ended there, and that's where there was going to be a big mysterious reveal. And so, as the group is on the train, Ginevra tells Rory that there is a meeting that that she'll want to attend when they arrive in Positano. And I said it at this Les News, that's this very famous hotel in Positano. Um, and yeah, and they have it's a surprise. It's mysterious what's going to happen there.
That's some hotel. I spent some time there. I'm telling you what, beautiful place, and the restaurant very good. That's the first time I ever saw somebody get a meal of fish completely encased in salt, and then I think it was branzino, and then they out came the waiter with the little chisel and the hammer and knocked all the salt around, pulled the fish out. I was amazed. I was dazzled by that. Well, that's a wonderful place. It was in the book. I loved it. Ay, ay, ay.
I'm dying.
Oh, there's
I haven't been.
oh, I'll tell you, everybody raves about northern Italy, which is lovely. I love the south. I love Sorrento and Positano, and oh my, I like it down there. I even like their wines as much, if not more, than the northern Italian wines. So enough about me and wines and anything. But hey, eventually she gets on the train, and she has like a private porter, and said, "Would you like to go down to the club car?" What happens when she gets to the club car? This is a huge. This is big. Listen to this, friends. Go ahead.
Well, this is when I mentioned, that I had the book started with a spark of, like, I saw this scene that we're about to talk about. I saw this scene, and then I saw the end scene. So I imagined, and this is what happens in this scene that you're referring to, is I imagine this girl, Rory, our main character, and she boards the train thinking she's getting this just free gift, free trip for herself, and then she steps into the club car, and she's shocked to see people she knows. So she sees her best friend, her brother, and her ex-fiance, and also a lawyer for Ginevra that Rory has kind of had this romance with in the 3 months she's been serving as Ginevra's main character. And it's very mysterious, and she's shocked, and yeah.
She's shocked, but at the same time, there are people I think that Rory gave permission for Ginevra to talk to about her background. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So she wasn't expecting this, and she was totally stunned. I think they were stunned too that she didn't know about this.
I don't know that I thought about it so consciously, that question, but me I don't know if they were stunned that she didn't know. Maybe they were. Yeah, that's interesting. I can't believe I didn't think about that so much.
The reason I say that is when she meets him in the club car, they say, hey, Rory." Like they knew she was coming, and they were shocked that their reaction was just like, "Whoa, I can't believe you didn't know I was coming. We were going to be here." I just got from what you wrote, I assumed no, that's the way it was. That they thought she had known about it. Rory didn't know about it, and it was wonderfully done. I'll tell you what, wonderfully done. It puts an interesting thing. Well, now tell me a little bit about Rory, because, as I said, she's sort of been a disgraced news anchor. Tell us a bit about her, please.
Yeah, so like you said, Rory, was a news anchor and, working very hard in Los Angeles, and, she had something happen that she didn't completely check a source, and so she was fired, and that's very devastating for her because she was, like, very much a career girl. Um and now she's gone, but she's kind of now taking this break, this time that she's a main character, to reevaluate her life's path and what does she actually want to do, and feeling like the newsroom, she's very feeling conflicted about working as a news anchor because she loved it, but she's around all this toxic news. And there's a quote in the book, I think, of like, if we want a happy world, I think we need happier people. And how is she going to contribute to that? And so just before this trip, she's gone on a meditation retreat, and she's really been taken by meditation, and that kind of um, spins out towards the end of the book, as to like her character arc. But I personally have two of my best friends are both former news anchors. And so I know a lot about it from both of them. And it's been fascinating to watch their own journeys. And one of them is a meditation teacher now. And so she's nothing like Rory, but it was very fun for me to kind of pull that little tidbit and play with it in the character of Rory.
That's interesting. This must have been a major faux pas. You never mention what the problem was, but it must have been pretty doggone big for them to fire her right away.
I think I said, I think I had a very short, maybe like a sentence or two about how um, about how there was a source she didn't fully vet, and so then the thing that was reported on air wasn't accurate, and that's like a big faux pas in the news world. But I don't think I really harped on it. It didn't feel like a huge part of the book or plot.
So she's there, and now she's on this train, and she sees her best friends and stuff like that. Hey, one of the things that got me, the name, I can't even type it. Ginevra. Ginevra gifts us. How did you come up with the name Ginevra? That's amazing to me.
You know what? It was, normally at my names, they come to me and they stick. They don't change in the editorial process, but with Ginevra, it did. I think I originally had called her Giada, and my editor thought, oh, maybe she thought it was too close to. Oh, I know what she thought. She thought it was too close to a character I had in my book that came out the year before. And so we decided to change it. And then she had suggested something and it didn't feel right for the character for me. And so then I don't know why I was very set on a G name. Also, when you're naming characters, it's like you don't want to repeat the first initial of another character you've already used. So, like, it becomes like, okay, what sounds different than everyone else? And anyway, when I heard Ginevra, I was like, or read it, I thought, oh, that's so perfect for this character. It felt so right. So, yeah, I love it.
The other day I typed in the name Ginevra. I decided to do a search. Apparently, that is the way the Italians and some other nations pronounce the word or use the word for Genevieve. Ginevra comes from Genevieve. Okay, so now I figured that. But when I type that thing, as my computer has no idea what I'm trying to type, it gets all sorts of different things on there. So it's a very interesting. And then the word X, EX, Ginevra X. Oh, X means what? Where does the X come from? Again, just your mind or what?
Well, the X came to me just for some reason from the beginning of the book. I was like, her name is Ginevra X. And then I had to work backwards of like, why is it Ginevra X? And I think it's like perfect in the book. And it's a little bit of a spoiler, but she does have a different original name and she changes her name to Ginevra X. I think it sounds pretty dramatic for like this big best-selling author. I like how it sounds, EX. But there is also like a more meaningful reason behind it that I think goes to, like, a spoiler.
You mentioned just briefly Gabriel. Now, who is Gabriel and what is his function on this train trip?
So in my head, I call him Gabrielle. I don't know if that's right, but that's what I call him in my head. Um, yes, he is Ginevra's lawyer, and he does all her paperwork, and he does the contracts for the main character, and he is an Italian guy who lives in Rome, and he's divorced and he has a child. Chiara, who's also on the trip, and Ginevra wants him to kind of manage this train trip. So she sends him and his daughter like aboard. And Gabrielle and Rory had this dalliance. She had broken up with her fiance and she's in Rome. And so he takes her around and it's kind of light and fun. And then it doesn't really go anywhere because he says he wants something serious. And she's so, her life is so up in the air right now that she can't commit to something like that. But it's an interesting a little triangle I put her in with her ex fiance on the train, along with Gabrielle, the guy that she just had this fling with.
The ex fiance, the name is Nate, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, there's so much we can chat about with this whole thing. I'll tell you what, it's just one of the things that I found interesting. And friends out there, think about this. When you and I see something or react to something, we see it through our eyes. But here, Jaclyn has done a wonderful job. I truly mean this, a wonderful job of taking people's acts and actions, and they're doing something for one reason. Rory doesn't see it that way because she's not in their eyes. I love that the different points of view that everybody has about why they're doing this, what's going on. Was that always part of your writing styles?
Yeah, I love writing an ensemble cast and writing multiple different perspectives. I just love it. It's like it's never really I've now just finished I think maybe you'll ask me about it, but I've now just finished my fourth thriller, so this one's my second. And in all of them, it just comes naturally to me of like writing this ensemble cast with multiple perspectives because I like that, they're all hiding little things and um they all see things in different ways and are present in scenes in different ways. So it's so fun to play with. I really I love it. It's hard for me to imagine actually writing only one POV. Maybe one day I'll do that. It feels actually harder for me to imagine doing. I don't know.
It does. It's really wonderfully done. And again, now we've got, and I'm going to shorten this here. We've got her brother Max, who apparently is the head of a biotech company. Am I correct there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Then we have Caroline, who's her best friend, and we've got Nate, who is her ex fiance. Wow, he's big in international stuff too. What does Nate do really?
Yeah. Nate has a very interesting career. He um is yeah, international relations, but he kind of got a specialty in the Middle East. And I actually based his career off this podcast I heard from this guy who's this fascinating guy. I think his name is Daniel Levin. And Daniel Levin's actual job is that he kind of solves crises in the Middle East. And so, like, when there are hostages or people who go missing, he has all these connections and can go in and try to find them. And so, I gave Nate kind of his background because I say that there was this hostage taken in Syria, and Nate is talking to Dubai arms dealers, and he's like trying to follow the trail to get this hostage back, and that's exactly what Daniel Levin did. And so I thought it was a fascinating career to give someone, and I'm always kind of thinking about my characters' careers as like how it informs them and I think it just contributes so much to someone's character, and I like having interesting careers. So, yeah.
That's very interesting, very very interesting. And now, one of the things about that you said about Ginevra paying for all this and the bonuses and gifts, etc. They were on their own, but they sort of weren't on their own. I mean, they sort of had an itinerary that Ginevra wanted them to sort of follow, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
She manipulates these people in such a way that they're doing maybe what she wants to see how they interact. You get that feeling?
I wanted there to be this yes, this tension of like what are Ginevra's true motivations? What is really going on here? I feel like that's important to the book, and so I definitely wanted that to be the undercurrent.
Mm-hmm. It certainly comes through here. That certainly does. And as the trip goes on, things start to change because all of a sudden, Gabrielle delivers a letter, if I'm not mistaken, to Rory. Rory reads it, and her whole world is basically shaken by what's in this letter, and it affects everything on this trip. What a unique way to do it. That was actually spectacular. We look in different perspectives, then you sort of put what she finds out. Boom, here's what's happening. Here's what's really. Wow, that was well done. Tell us about that.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted there to be a bombshell announcement like on the train, and I felt like, Ginevra is like our puppeteer kind of or a puppet organizing this trip, and puppeteer, no puppeteer. And I like that she's kind of like hovering over it with this letter. And yeah, she tells there's a lot of revelations. But the biggest one is that Caroline, her best friend who works at her brother's company, is siphoning money from the company. And, because Ginevra does all this research into these characters, like into Rory, but also Rory's kind of close circle, because she's using all of them as inspiration for her book. So she's found out this information through her private investigator and sends Rory in a tailspin because, Ginevra is giving her the information ostensibly because she wants Rory to be able to fix it and help her brother and, get Caroline on this straight and narrow path. And, so that's like a very big bombshell.
Oh, wonderfully well done. Wonderfully well done. Well, this happens before she gets to Cinque Terre. What happens at Cinque Terre? We had two huge incidents, which I don't think are spoilers, but there's huge, huge things that happen. One with the boulder and one with manuscripts. What's this all about?
But yeah, well, there is a boulder that kind of heads its way towards Rory, and she's saved. Max pushes her out of the way, her brother. So that's like a very big incident. And then the second thing that happens is, well, when they're on when the whole group meets, Gabrielle gives them all advanced copies of Ginevra's book that she's written about Rory, and so they all have these copies that they can read. Like, what does Ginevra say? What is this fictional tale she's like spun out of all their lives? And they've all started reading the book. Some of them have started, some of them haven't. And when they're in Cinque Terre, they all leave their books like on beach chairs, like to save the chairs, and then they go to do their exploring. And when they get back, all the books are gone. And they look, no one finds anything. And so it's this very big, like, did someone take them? Does someone not want them to read them? Like, what's going on?
Oh, Rory becomes completely suspicious of everybody. I mean, she is suspicious of us. Caroline did this. No, Nate did this. Max had to.
She is.
Yeah. I mean, I'm telling you what, Jaclyn, Rory's whole character changed after that letter and how she viewed everybody and what was going on, to the point where it almost seemed like she was making herself the center of all things that were now happening on that trip. Again, that what Ginevra had hoped for? I don't know, but very, very well done. Very well done. Rome doesn't get much better, does it?
No.
No, Rome is a tough place, It's not a good place. By that time, even though it's a day or two later, nobody wants to do anything. That's part of the thing. I don't want to go to see the Colosseum. I don't want to go there. I don't want to do this. But there's an incident with Gabrielle. Oh, I can't say his name. Gabrielle's daughter. Tell us a little bit about that. That's a very interesting side bit.
Oh, well, I think that was before Rome. She kind of runs away because she's very mad at her father, and Rory runs into her, and kind of takes on this role as babysitter that she didn't intend on. And as she's getting her ice cream, whatever, Chiara, the daughter who's 8, I think, tells Rory just like sort of nonchalantly that she overheard Nate, her ex-fiance, and Caroline, Rory's best friend, kind of talking. And from whatever conversation Chiara let slip, innocently, Rory sort of deduces that there's something amiss and that maybe her best friend slept with her ex-fiance.
Oh, man.
So
Oh, man.
yeah.
And that was interesting because her best friend sleeps with her ex-fiance after they're no longer a couple. Okay. And this is like, to Rory, they both basically cheated on her, but there really wasn't, because they weren't
It
engaged
wasn't.
anymore.
It's true.
No, that's right.
Yeah,
But
it's true.
again, Rory takes everything as, oh, you're doing this to me. You're doing this to me. The little girl was going to run away, though. She wanted to
Yeah.
run away. Yeah. Wow. That I found fascinating. That was, then again, you heard a little tidbit then from her, and you start putting all these little things together, and oh my word, very, very good. I'll tell you. Well, now let's talk a little bit about Rory's father. Interesting gentleman. Tell us a little bit about him, and where was he from? What's the background? And what's his current situation health-wise?
Yeah, Rory's father, his name is Ansel. He's from the former Soviet Union. He grew up in Ukraine and had a very hard life. And now he lives in Michigan, but he has Alzheimer's, early onset Alzheimer's. So he's in his 60s, and it's progressing. It's getting pretty bad. And like, most of the time he recognizes Rory when he talks, but sometimes he doesn't. And it's like it's a very big deal. And that's, you alluded to Max's biotech company. So Max has created this vaccine that's going to hopefully cure Alzheimer's. So that's like a very big motivation, is curing his father.
Okay. But now we go back to Ginevra, and Ginevra also happened to be in Moscow with her family when and somehow bumped into Rory's father. But before there was a Rory, obviously. Why was Ginevra in Moscow? What was that whole situation about?
Correct. So Ginevra was a young girl and like 19, I believe. And um, at the time, it was the late 70s, early 80s. Um, Jews were, Ansel's Jewish, and Jews were very persecuted in the former Soviet Union and also weren't able to get out. And there opened this very narrow pathway for some Jews to get out. And it meant that they had to get their addresses out because they had to be issued an invitation from abroad. And so, brave Jews, usually from around the world, used to go to Moscow or go to the Soviet Union and try to smuggle out the addresses of Jews there to get them help and to get them out. It was a very big thing of the time. And so Ginevra's father is a Holocaust survivor and he's a professor in Rome, and it's very important for him to help these persecuted Jews. And so they go on like this trip to the Soviet Union, and their mission is to help the Jews there.
Okay. Now, my understanding is that I don't think it is totally based on your father, but your father had similar instances happening to him, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about your dad.
Yeah. My dad, I really gave him Ansel the same background as my dad. Like Ansel's personality and his condition of Alzheimer's and how he is as a father is not like my father, but his history and what happened to him in the Soviet Union is pretty much identical to my dad's. And my dad experienced a lot of persecution for being Jewish. He had a very hard life in the Soviet Union. It was really horrible to be a Jew there. And that's actually how he got out, is that he smuggled his address to tourists, actually American tourists. And he was issued an invitation and he applied to leave and he was refused, which means he became a refusenik. It was like a term common then, which is like, you're an enemy of the state, basically. You're not allowed to leave, but you wanted to leave. And so you're a traitor and you're fired from your job and you're tailed by the KGB. And a lot of people at that time, a lot of Jews who were refuseniks were sent to Siberia, were jailed. I mean, were never heard from again. So it was like a very perilous position. And my dad kind of made enough trouble and enough noise that they finally let him go. And they said, you have 10 days, get out. And it was a long journey from there. But he came to America with 26 cents. So yeah, my dad had quite the journey from the Soviet Union. And
Did he go right from the Soviet Union to Michigan?
no, they go the path then, or at least for him, I think for a lot of refuseniks, was through Le Dispoli in Italy. And so he was there for a few months working, trying to get money, which actually was stolen from him right before he left. So that's why he came with 26 cents. But yeah, Italy and then to Michigan.
It's interesting because when my wife escaped from Romania back in '84 during the communist thing, she went to Yugoslavia, and from Yugoslavia, they took her to Rome also. They took her to Rome, put her in
Wow. Yeah, I
camp
think
there.
I think it was a big camp for like immigrants. Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Interesting.
Yep. And that's where she got her. She still proudly has her certificate or whatever it is from the U.S. being admitted there as human rights and all this other stuff. And so, yeah. Matter of fact, she's getting to be 40 years she's been here. So, but we're happy that she made it here. I certainly am. I couldn't live without her. Yeah, but that's fascinating that we have a little bit of a similarity there. That's wonderful.
We do.
Yeah, yeah. But it's interesting because when I talk to authors, sometimes I talk about where do you get these characters from? Where's it developed from? You're very fascinating. Just bear with me, please. You have one friend who does international relations. You had two friends who were in the news anchor business. Your father's from Russia. Did you consciously draw upon all these people to make this wonderful book?
Well, my friend is in international relations. That was like a guy I heard about in a podcast. I don't think it's conscious as much as like, I think every book I write represents a version of me from the time I write it. And it's not always like, I think it's not like I'm writing my own story. Like for instance, the thriller I just finished, I'm a little bit calling it my war book because I've lived through a war the past year, but it's not about war at all. It has nothing to do with anything, but like little tidbits I've probably pulled and like they're in there a bit subconsciously. So, So yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I just pull things and then I make a little mishmash of it. It's like not always easily traceable, but I do, of course, I'm always pulling things from my own life and things that are themes I'm working through in my own life somehow make it their way in some form into my books.
Absolutely. We're all shaped by forces around us. And, that's just wonderful. You could incorporate it. Now, one of the other things I noticed here is that you have basically, we have around 6 characters or so, 7, but basically you follow 4 people. Now, or Agatha Christie had a lot of people on her Orient Express. Okay. You've got 4. Did you find it? Why did you choose only 4 characters opposed to more people involved?
Yeah, it's really funny. I was actually thinking about this book in the context of the fact that, like I said, I've now finished 4 thrillers, and this book has the fewest amount of characters of any of my thrillers, and I never think about it very consciously. It always feels like what is gonna serve this book. That always just feels like the question I'm asking, and I didn't need more characters for this book. Like this it just felt accurate. But I do typically my books do have more characters. Like for instance, my latest book, my agent's like, maybe there are too many. But so yeah, I don't know. It wasn't a conscious choice, but it is my book with the fewest characters.
It allowed you, though, Jaclyn, to, I think, delve more deeply into the characters and the personalities than Agatha Christie did in her book, because there were 10, 11, 12. It's too many, I mean, it was perfect for her book, but yeah, you can't delve like you do. So that was very, very well done. Yeah, very, very well. I talk about Agatha Christie, and one of the things that makes Agatha Christie is the fact that some of her books have been made into movies. And of course, Murder on the Orient Express is made into a couple movies, 2, 3 times. I'm still used to the original one, where Richard Widmark gets killed by everybody on the train. Did you ever put yourself in the position of a casting director? And when you're thinking this, who might play the parts here? Who might be Rory or Ginevra or Caroline? Did you ever think about that?
Well, it's so funny because I'm always asked this question, and I feel like I'm in the minority of authors that I never think about this. My book that came out last year, like I'm not allowed to really talk about the details publicly, but it's in development with a studio for a TV series or for a series. And yeah, they asked me the same question and like who would I cast? And it was hard for me to think about the answer. So um it's funny. So I don't know why. It's not I don't usually imagine my characters like in terms of their Hollywood counterparts. But you and I were talking about this briefly before we started recording, and you had suggested Kathy Bates for Ginevra, and I said, "Oh my god, that is exactly who should play Ginevra. I really, really see it." So I loved. So maybe you're my casting director.
I'll be glad to take that position. I'll tell you. But we talked about that. I also thought that a young Demi Moore would be perfect for Rory, and
I like that.
Bryce Howard would play Caroline. I like Bryce Howard a
Yeah, I
lot.
like that
So
too.
yeah,
I
good
could
stuff.
see both of those.
Yeah, but it's interesting when you have your mind's eye when you're writing. What are you seeing? Or are you just not seeing people? You're not envisioning people. You just have the strict character.
What do I see? I do see like I don't see a person. I see like almost like a fuzzy person, like yeah, I think I see a fuzzy person, and I think I feel this might sound woo woo because I'm a pretty like spiritual person, but I almost feel the energy of a person. Like I can feel like how they are, like what their vibration is. I think that's what I'm like tuning into when I'm writing. And I'm not, yeah. I do see something. It's not like I don't see a visual picture, but it's fuzzy.
The main character, always your working title.
Yes. It felt like the obvious title. It's funny because again, I'm referring to my 4 thrillers because I've just finished my 4th and the next 2 will come out in the coming years, but the other 3 titles are all places. And so I did think like briefly, should the main character, instead of that title, should there be something referring to the train or whatever? But it just felt so obvious to me that it had to be like, how could that not be the title? That's what the book is about. It just felt so clear. And, you sort of submit a title to your publishing team and then cross your fingers that they're not gonna be like, wait, I think it should be something different. And they never did. So I was happy.
It's wonderful. Now, hey, but one of the things that was interesting is this is now Ginevra is supposed to be a very well-known, well-bought, well-published author, many bestsellers for years. Yet she had a clunker before this one. And this is almost like she felt this one had to get her back or she'd lose her place on the bestseller. Is this typical for authors? I mean, is this something you guys have to worry about all the time?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think even huge bestsellers can have a flop. And I think no matter how high you are, there's always, you just really never know how an audience is going to react to a book. And it's hard to predict what sales are going to be, even for like, I mean, I would say for some of the stratospheric bestsellers, it would probably be rare for it to be a flop. And I don't know that I called her book a flop. I think it just wasn't as successful as was anticipated, and she didn't make the bestseller list. But
She felt the need that this next one
yeah,
had to be
for
really
sure,
something. Yep. Hmm.
she needed to
Yeah.
prove herself. Yeah,
Yeah. Really something. Wow. That's it's interesting because I talk to a lot of authors and they say, well, I have a 3-book deal and I really like this book, which happens to be the third book that they've written for this publishing company. And I said, well, you're going to get it? When's the next one? Well, got to see. They haven't picked it up yet. Have to see how this one sells. I said, Jeezy, Pete, you write good books. I can't imagine not wanting to have you on as a permanent person here, permanent author. Who's your publisher, by the way?
Simon and Schuster. Emily Bessler Books is a division of Adria at Simon and Schuster.
Okay, good, good. And have they done all your books?
They've done my 2 thrillers, and I have another 2-book deal with them to do my next 2 thrillers.
Wonderful. So
Yeah.
right now, you don't have to worry about that. Right now, you're in good shape. We know where we're going to find your books. It's a wonderful book. It really, really is. They don't make it to Positano, do they? Well, they make it to Positano, but they don't make it to the Cyrenus. That happened.
Yeah,
Can't tell about that.
they do. They make it to La Cyrenus, but, there's some, without giving spoilers, there, I mean, from the first chapter that there's a murder, so there's, death along the way. Let's just say,
Death
until they
along
get
the way.
there.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah,
That's good. Death along the way. There's a title. Death along the way.
along the way. Death along the route.
That cracks me up. Oh, you're so wonderful. I love it. Oh my. What do you think Rory's going to do? You think she's going to go back to Michigan to help out with her dad? You think she's going to try to become a meditation counselor? What do you think's up for Rory? And will we see her in future books?
It's such a good question. It's so funny because for better or for worse, I have this quality of that when I finish a book, I really leave my characters where I leave them. And I don't imagine where they go. I just don't. I like really can put them where I put them, and I just let them go. And it's hard for me to speculate because I think that that's like a new story. It's a new story, and I haven't gone there in my head yet. So I don't know. I really
Okay.
don't know where she goes. Yeah.
Do you envision maybe ever going back to Rory?
Right now, no. I don't really, of any of my books, ever really envision sequels. For my book that's in development, for a series, they had asked me like, you know, what I think might happen next, in case there was like another season or whatever. And it was hard. It's still hard for me to think about. I don't know. Like I could imagine taking that project on and making myself sit down. Like it could be fun, but typically when my books come to me, they come as wholly new worlds and wholly new characters. And
And
yeah,
you have to know that as a devotee of South Korean TV dramas, which my wife and I watch every night, all theirs are one season and done. 16, 18 episodes, done. We're not going to go anymore. Don't
interesting.
worry. I love them. I love the South Korean stuff, but they're like I said, they're 16 to
Interesting.
18. And you talk about your first book in development for TV, which we can't get into, but I think more and more books are going into that TV series format than onto the big screen.
Yeah.
Have anybody contacted you about this book being, maybe becoming a movie or a TV show?
Yeah, I have a TV agent, and there are conversations being had. So who knows what will happen. I don't know. Stay tuned. I hope. I would love it.
All right. So then that leads me, and we've been talking about this. Now, this leads me to what's next? What's next for Jaclyn Goldis?
Yeah, well, like I've said, I signed another 2-book deal with my publisher, so I have thrillers coming out next year, next May, I think, and the year after, and, I'm so excited about them. Next year, I have a book called The Safari coming out, and it is, a murder mystery set on a luxury safari in, South Africa in Kruger National Park, and it's about a very glamorous, wealthy family, and the matriarch is getting married for the second time, and they all go out for her wedding to the safari, and there is a murder, and so they're all kind of locked into their luxury lodge and investigating each other, and
Very good.
it's
I
really fun.
like
I'm
that.
excited about
I
that one.
like that. I
Thank,
like that. Well,
thank
good.
you.
That's wonderful. So you're 2 already. You got what was your first book called, by the way?
So my first book that was actually published came out in 2021, and it's not a thriller. It's called When We Were Young. It's historical women's fiction. And my first thriller came out last year called The Chateau.
Okay. So we have that. Now we got 2 more after this one, correct? So
Yeah,
I'll give you 5 published books. Are you working on a 6th
yeah.
already, or are you still you are? Oh my goodness
Well, I
gracious.
have it. Uh, I'm in the idea phase. I have ideas. I have ideas for the next 2 books I want to write, and so I'm kind of in the. There's always like a plotting idea phase that I'm in for like some months. So that's what I'm in right now.
I talked to one of my earliest authors, a gentleman named Will Thomas, and Will writes, murder mysteries back in Victorian times. And, I asked him, I said, "Well, how many do you envision in this series?" He goes, "Well, when I began, I envisioned 20 books in this series." I was just stunned.
Wow.
20. He's already at number 16. I think we're gonna keep going after this, but wow, when do you guys and now you're talking about 2 more to ay, ay, ay. You must be writing all full time. You really are writing, thinking. Do you travel all the time as part of this?
So, I'm really fortunate that I've traveled a lot in my life. So I'm like a lot of the books are revisiting places I've been. For my book, my fourth thriller coming out not next year, but the year after, that one I did travel to do research for. Um, but yeah, the 2 ideas I have are based on places I've already been. So I really I love studying. I mean, books abroad. I live internationally. I love to travel. So it's really fun. I feel like it feels like my niche of there's a lot of American thriller writers writing books set in America. Um, I love setting them abroad. So yeah, I do travel, but I've been to a lot of places, so I'm mining a lot of my travels also.
Great, great. This is one great author, friends. And if you get a chance, you want to pick up her book, the main character, the one before that, Chateau, is that what it's called? Chateau, you
The
said?
Chateau, correct.
The Chateau. You want to get her books. They're wonderful. They keep you, they're not ugly, they're not gory, they're just good mysteries, really fun stuff. I'm telling you what, it has kept me going. Like I said, I knew 5 times who did it and who died. I was wrong each and every. I even wrote her. I said, well, I was 3. I got on my 3rd one and I'm wrong all the time, And oh man, you do a fine, fine job. And you know what? I want to thank you so much for being with us today, Jaclyn. Thanks for coming on Books and Looks.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. This was such a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm really touched by your kind words. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this, friends, because I had a great time interviewing Jaclyn from over there in Tel Aviv, and very, very good. We've never had anybody from Israel on, so I was very happy to chat with her. It's a really fine book. It's no blood, gore, or anything else. You're going to really like this book. I don't do a lot of mysteries anymore, but this one was so good, I felt I needed to chat with you about it. So, hey, I hope you take the time, look her books up, buy them, rent them, whatever you need to do. Jaclyn Goldis, the main character, is a good one for you. So anyway, on behalf of my website, viewsonbooks.com, on behalf of my good friends at Podcast Studio X, this is Blaine DeSantis for Books and Looks, saying may all your leaves be pages in a book. Bye-bye.